Hello, it's Tuesday, July 17th, 2018. I'm Tony Smario, coming to you from my father's YouTube channel, BroSal.org. And again, it's been a couple of weeks since I've had an opportunity to collect my thoughts and record something. Last time, it took a while for Dad to get the commentary up because he got a heat stroke from being out in the sun with me all day, and it took him several days to recover. It was really quite a dangerous thing for him at his age. So we're really lucky that he's feeling a lot better now. But that's why it took a while last time between when I recorded it and when it actually got put up on YouTube. So hopefully this one will be a little closer. And I know it's been a long time between commentaries, and I'm nowhere near back to where I'd like to be with all the studies I have going on. But nonetheless, we're going to get another round of connecting the dots here in 2018. I think at least it seemed to attract a little more interest in the way of overall views. So hopefully people enjoy this type of commentary, and we'll see if we can't find some insights that are meaningful. So, boy, I'm going to I've got a lot on my mind, so I'm going to let things move around a little bit. The people that are used to listening to me, I guess, will be able to extract what they want from it. And those, if there are any that's new, hang with me for a minute here, and once I get warmed up, excuse me, normally I can find something interesting to say. And in my mind, I keep feeling like what we're doing in our little world here on this channel and in our research and our study is we're going down the rabbit hole that is the illusion that's been created all around us. And I had a discussion with my father a couple of weeks ago or so about the nature of our information, and what are we using to get our picture that we're making our commentary of or from. How corrupted must all the information be? No matter what side it comes from. It's like the food. Unless you're growing your own food, you're buying food from somewhere where they're producing it for a marketplace that has certain standards. And it's through those standards that they manipulate even honest or well-intended producers of any content. And in some marketplaces, like media, you just can't afford to have too many voices. And so they don't. I mean, they have a million voices, but all owned by the same, the airwaves are all owned by the same small group that all happens to, connect in nicely to all this corporately owned United States of America. And even worse than that, you go up another notch and you get to this sort of international cartel, as Quigley labeled them, that through financial tyranny sort of control the world. They have their grip through finance on the entire world. And the hard part is to relate to people that are watching the world that's presented to them, I suppose a world that isn't presented to them, but is just as apparent. 9/11 is such a great example. Carol Quigley is, as I pointed out the last time in the last commentary, how can you possibly ignore the importance of that in any social political commentary? Anthony Sutton, how can you pretend that what he talked about in the way of providing, even producing a communist enemy and providing them with technology that maintains parity in order to keep that whole block of people from ever breaking out of their servitude and their position, because they can never develop any newer technology. So you keep giving them technology. So Anthony Sutton had that piece of the picture that starts taking you down this rabbit hole. Quigley sort of provides the hole itself by pointing out that the world isn't just a bunch of us free people voting on what we think is best. And oops, we made a wrong turn here and there, but it's all up to us. We can correct it, can't we? I mean, if you think of Carol Quigley's picture from 50 years ago, I mean, we couldn't correct it unless those powers, that cartel, were on our side. In fact, if Quigley was right, there would be very little in the world in the way of resistance that could change the course that was set by the cartel of financial power. So, so the other piece of that puzzle is that crazy, mysterious, religious or pseudo-religious, mystical side. If even if you go to the Hopi Indians or the Australian Aboriginals or anybody, they've all got this end of the world. Original Buddhism has it, end of the world kind of stuff. Where's that fit in? How we kill ourselves through our own degradation. The New Age concept is we're rising out of the lowest form of expression, this material form, the ego. And we have to break beyond our ego. We have to get beyond the limitations of the dualistic framework that keeps us bound in a diametric system of good and evil and yes and no and up and down. We got to get beyond good and evil. Become the Superman, the Overman that understands. And I think it's important in my world view now, it's becoming more and more important to regard the people that give us this world of ours as not being evil in the sense that we've been taught, evil coming from a devil that's a little pitchfork thing in the sky, but rather evil that comes from within by justifying our own actions, justifying our own good over that of others, and justifying it in any way that perpetuates it. Like the lie, you tell the lie, and then, instead of just copping to it, you make the lie a little bigger, and then once that gets rolling, boy, there's nothing to do but be committed to the lie and stick with it. And no matter how many times it compounds, you have to just keep rolling those dice and compound with it until, like they show you in the movie, sometime you have to blow your brains out over it because you didn't get away with it. The lie caught up with you. And so I think that's a little bit of an allegory for the position we're all in with regard our own existence, but to the I don't know how to refer to them, the they, when I'm always saying they and they do this and they do that. I mean, of course, the ones who have the power. Quigley called them a cartel. I don't think he fully even meant to express who the they really are in person, though the research that Anthony Sutton shows through the foundations, certainly reveal that all the money people that we consider the power base of the world, you know, internationally, we don't know all the ones in Asia and Africa and uh, the Middle East, all the Arab and such people on the Brotherhood is what I'm speaking of. But that's what exists. I'm saying I don't know. I can't identify who they are in China and Japan and Mongolia and Zimbabwe and Ethiopia, but they exist because this cartel's been around a long, long time, and nobody gets to be in power by our day and age unless they might be left in power to do to do something that's in the bigger picture. But nobody gets in power today without it fitting the bigger picture. And so that they that I speak of is the brotherhood that's made up internationally. There are no enemies in their world. They're trying to bring about a better world from their perspective. So much better that it's like a doctor having to cut the cancer out of the patient to save it. And you can't be in love with the cancer, or you can't save the patient, right? You can't be in love with all the animals, or the sick ones will get the well ones sick and you'll have no animals. So you have to be willing to cull. You have to be willing to kill the sick animals. You have to be willing to prune the tree. All these allegories and analogies that you learn from history and from literature, etc., aren't lost on the people that run the world. They consider themselves, the enlightened ones. They're the eye of that pyramid because they don't believe in a god. Then Lucifer's not that eye. Lucifer represents the idea of knowledge and light. They're the eye. Anyone who occupies that highest understanding, the enlightened are that eye. They rule the pyramid, which is the pyramid of, I don't know how to say it, the physical structure of embodied uh, evolution or embodied life, embodied spirit, embodied life force. I imagine that's how the enlightened view this pyramid, and why it's shaped like a pyramid, and that it's a movement upward. It relies on a base. Understanding relies on the base of misunderstanding, just as a building relies on its foundation. Something has to provide for there to be a cap. All the stones can't be the capstone. All the stones can't reside on the top level. So all the stones can't be equal in that way of this upward thrust. And so in analogy, I suppose, this exoteric versus esoteric understanding, and why they're in their own minds, they're not evil. They are protecting the esoteric knowledge, offering it to the masses as best they can while protecting it and protecting themselves from the masses. And the only way to do that is by offering the masses some sort of extreme version of their own fanaticism, like Christianity, Zionism, Islam, or atheism, or any of these isms, scientism. astrology, all their worlds that they offer it to the masses in an exoteric version of what they understand to be the truth. That way the masses can be naturally separated, just as you plant your seeds, and for the ones that grow up strong among the others, those are the ones that get the earth and the care and the nurturing and the water. The other ones have to be plucked, pruned, culled to make way for the strong ones. And so that's their vision of how man rises. It's a natural progression. It might be spiritual in the sense that there's a metaphysical truth in it all, meaning there's an element beyond what we see, but they don't believe that element that they might call life force, Gaia, or some such thing would be akin to a god as they've painted it for the religions. White, or well, to the modern United States of America, a white-haired white person in the sky, which is just to me, too coincidentally like all the visions of Zeus. I mean, if if they didn't just make Zeus what the Christians call God, then come on, show me the difference in how we Christians in the world, in that propagandized world of Christianity, believe in God. It's Zeus in the sky fighting against, it's Clash of the Titans, and that's all that's been sold down the line all along. The Romans, bought into the same thing, and that's why look how strong it was, the Romans and their gods. Why they were willing to fight for them and kill for them. Look at the Christians today. Look at the Zionists today. Look at the Islam today. It's all just an extension of that same perpetuation of the exoteric version of the story being produced in a fanatical version for the masses, so that the esoteric version could not be it's not discovered, because they would love to have it learned, but it can't be discovered in the way of, aha, there they are, let's get them. So it can't be advertised. It has to be something that's found. It has to be something that you're initiated into, because only those who demonstrate they understand the knowledge are going to be welcome in the new age, the new world order, all these silly terms that to them mean something so much more than the propagandized version. I guess I know I'm taking a little long way around some of these points, but it's because I've got a lot in my mind, after weeks and weeks of thought and contemplation and trying to put my mind around what's going on and what to talk about. And sort of everything is the story, and the story is everything. So we have to pick our battles, and I feel like this whole down the rabbit hole vision to me is apt, in that we're a few people who are really seeing the craziness in a different way. We're getting underneath, it's like pulling the curtain back on Oz there, the Wizard of Oz, and seeing that he's just a man with some flashy pyrotechnics and a scary voice. And so is the devil, and the all this stuff that the world's full of, that boob tubes full of, and that the mainstream media just sort of cavalierly goes along with, as if they've never heard any of the teachings that undermine that. They've never heard, just like they've never heard of a cartel of bankers that decide what Gaddafi does all along or what China does. I mean, as I keep saying, how hard is it to threaten China with all the manufacturing and all the consuming? And if the consuming so bad for the earth, how come the people of the consumptive nations aren't being put on notice that their consumption is just, we're going to have to change the way we do things? Because, of course, what could you change to? How could the lone producers at the top right now, the the very select people that produce everything, all the medicine, all the food, all the water, all the power, all the construction, right? All the guns. How could they continue to provide everything for everyone if everyone was now supposed to stop this consumptive society, this plastic sort of society, which is why they can't, you can't stop that. What are people going to go back to? Individual, independent operations in their neighborhoods, people making tamales and selling them on the corner like they do down where I live in Mexico. People picking fruit and growing fruit and selling it, you know, at their little local fruit market on the weekends, like they still try and do in small communities for the most part. You know, what could we go to stop all the plastic going into the earth except something more agricultural and organic, like an indigenous type of society? In what direction would you go? More technical? Fewer producers? What, pulling it out of their behind? Where do they get it? How does all this work? So, that's what I was touching on last week. The fact that they can keep selling us this world in which we're so great, even though they also show us in all our liberal programming for the socialist mindset, for the blue team, how destructive we are. Well, if we're so powerful and we know we're so destructive, how come we're not changing anything? How come we're not reverting to some of the practices that are not so destructive? Instead of pressing on with those as if it's we the people who are deciding to press on with it. It's only a few people in charge of food manufacturing. If our big, huge grocery stores are full of plastic wrapped crap that's killing us, producing an obese society, well, I mean, how many people would it take to change that legislation? We see that it doesn't take the people. The people's vote doesn't do anything. That's just a cover up. So, anyway, I don't want to have to go too far on that perspective because I know the people listening get it. I want to paint a deeper, I want to, like, the way I feel is I'm standing here sort of doing a slow 360, like you take a panoramic view of what's going on. And what's going on is this lunacy akin to the story of Alice in Wonderland, all around us, and that's become normal for everyone. It's just absolutely normal that you're told on one hand that you're destroying the earth with your plastic, but on the other hand, you're being advertised to 24 hours a day for the next little plastic thing that comes from China, who we're in a trade war with because they're trying to take over the South China Sea. They're building up an army. They got their first, uh, aircraft carrier, and they're puffing up their feathers and threatening us. And of course, all their money and potential comes from our factories being there, but that's never mentioned. Why don't we just shut down the factories? Why don't we just go back to producing stuff on our own continent? Stop sending the money over there. Would that, what would that do? I never hear that mentioned. It might be mentioned in some silly offhand way, but it's not discussed as, where does their strength come from and why do we keep enabling it as a nation? Just like it's never mentioned, geez, if the plastic's filling the ocean, why don't we make the plastic makers stop making, why don't we go back to putting meat and cold cuts and stuff from the grocery store in wax paper instead of individually wrapped plastic packaging from fewer and fewer in other words, there's just fewer and fewer boards of directors that direct these fewer and fewer companies that own all this food manufacturing. I mean, it doesn't take much to just tell them, boom, new regulations, you know, you can't use plastic on anything under, half a pound. So you can't put 4 ounces of meat in its own plastic package. Anything, I don't know, any regulations that seem to squeeze that back. No, instead, no plastic bag. Now, well, they have them, of course. Now I have to pay for a plastic bag in California, which I say, okay, that's great. But has it changed anything? Has anybody stopped making plastic bags? Or do we just suddenly feel some sort of cathartic satisfaction? Well, look at us. We don't have plastic bags. Doesn't matter. We're going to war. Doesn't matter. We're killing innocent people over a lie. Nobody's demanding the truth of 9/11 be brought out. Nobody's demanding that these criminals that brought down our economy, 10 years ago with all their Ponzi schemes be thrown in jail and the riches be returned to the people of the United States, along with the ability to vote and have what they want. Nobody wanted Donald Trump for president. Are you freaking kidding me? The whole world's outraged about it. As I keep saying, it's like 8% of the people seem to have their way now. We call that the majority. And that's just, 8% if you were to pretend that the vote mattered, right? The fact is, the small percentage of people at the top with a plan don't give a I mean, that's all just numbers on their screen. Who cares? That keeps the people busy counting each other's votes, chasing each other down, selling each other crap. That's why they allow the freedoms as such within the entire picture, because they're directing a scheme, a play, Alice in Wonderland. And what keeps everybody on that path is being in Wonderland. That's, I guess, what's, one of the insights I just want to get back to now, and then I want to talk about something else as well. But one of the insights I think is very important for people to recognize these days is, where's your information come from, you think? And it, is there, what does it mean when they tell us Trump's going to wherever to meet with Putin and they're having a summit to, does that have anything to do with what I'm talking about these people that belong to these secret societies that have some sort of plan for the world and hire people like Trump and Putin to, from their CFR kind of initiated memberships that are, as I said before, they're committed. They know who they work for. They know why. They're not evil people. They're not killing people. They are doing what has to be done. They're cutting the cancer out of this world that humanity might go on. I believe that that's how they sell it to themselves. And so, in order to do that, they have to, there's two things going on. The truth has to be there. The initiate, the overman, has to be able to find the truth, just like a plant has to be able to find the light. If you shut all the light out, you kill all the plants, even the strong ones. So you're trying to encourage the strong ones. So you have to shine the light and at the same time call mislead the masses with the same light. And if you read Morals and Dogma, that's sort of a very crude way of presenting what Albert Pike's saying about the danger of the masses and the purposefulness of deception, and how the degrees have to mislead people so that the truth is always something that keeps staying one step ahead until you get to that 30th degree. Then you can start understanding what all the truth you've been misunderstanding has been leading up to. And so, this is their way of hiding the truth in plain sight. And actually, that's what makes it interesting for people like us. But as Dad and I were speaking of, I mean, so, what is any of that media that we're getting how do we have our discussion about what's going on? Where do we get it from? Oh, well, Trump's going to meet with Putin, and Trump's going to meet with North Korea, and America just, added 5 new B blah blah blahs, and North Korea just did this. And how do we know any of that? I mean, what does any of that mean? I don't believe nuclear weapons are what they say they are. Certainly there's going to be great destruction, but none of the wars are what they say they are. None of these false flags are what they say they are. None of the stories lead anywhere, as I've been saying for a long time, right? This couldn't go on after 2008. This economy of ours, it was blowing up by everyone's measure. Everyone in that world of economics, all the professors, everybody in that alt world of presenting the facts was presenting that this mess, this Ponzi scheme, this lie, this stealing, this it wasn't just happening to us, but the entire world, that they were really just sucking the life out of the world. That was 8 years ago. And what's come of that? Nothing. Not nothing. We're all broke. And everyone in the world. That really was a major step, obviously, in their plan. That wasn't some accident of some nasty bankers. If it was, don't you think the people that really have the power in the world would have just had those bankers killed or whatever if they weren't stealing the money for the people they work for? They can't be the ultimate people. That would be very vulnerable, wouldn't it? If the bankers, any military general could say, you know what, those bankers aren't being fair. I don't care about the money. I'm not getting the money. My soldiers aren't getting the money. They're getting screwed. See, so it's a brotherhood that's pulling these strings. That's who's behind the Alice in Wonderland world, is a very organized fraternity, because there's sisters in the brotherhood too. And that's why one of the things that must get leaked out in their world is that they're not evil, they're informed. And that's why all these rock stars and stuff, they love to go study the Kabbalah and make their pyramids and all this, because it's obviously the way that they indicate that they're not part of the religious masses. Hey, don't leave us behind. We want to move forward. We're part of we know what we're doing. We're working for the forward movement of mankind out of the darkness of the past. That's why they're happy to laugh at all the monikers, New Age, New World Order, and play that game. Illuminati, Zionism. I imagine that the ones that really get paid a lot of money and are in our face all the time are quite aware. I shouldn't say in any kind of real knowledge, unless they happen to be some unlikely someone who highly initiated, like say Shaquille O'Neal, right? He's a 30th degree or some high degree. Yeah, Shaquille, you bet you son of a gun, you better believe that if he is initiated to those degrees, then he knows he's chosen to help move this world forward in a way that only he can understand and his brothers and sisters in the fraternities. And that, he's already made his vows upon his life to carry that out. And I think this is a good departure point for the other thing, or one of the other things that I hope to mention this week as part of the more focused propaganda and brainwashing. The one point is to see that in general, as I spoke of last week with this great deception, now as you go down this rabbit hole of deception, you find yourself surrounded by untruth everywhere. So that the real truth can be in question, or truth itself. Who's to know what's truth? There is no truth. Even boys and girls, we don't even know what that means anymore. And they're being taught, or propagandized, I should say, at a young age to question that. I say, as I've said before, the people in charge, they don't seem to have any question. But they need to force the exoteric masses into that position of demonstrating. Are they fanatical, or are they overmen? Are they going to move into the future as people who can be enlightened and grow, or are they going to follow one of a million courses, like all the rest of the plants, like they're just like the, I say they're playing out scripture, so they're going to follow they're going to fall on bad soil and not hear the truth, all the things that the way that Christians teach it. When I grew up, you're going to believe in Jesus. That's the good soil, like the way Paul taught it. All right. And so that's where I'll take this departure from this general world of absolute confusion where it's all theater and circus and manipulation and Truman Show. The truth, as Anthony Sutton said in one of his lectures with the 3 levels of information, you have that first level of information, which is pure propaganda. It's only true by coincidence. I mean, it's not true because it's true. It just happens to be true. But that first level of information, then there's that second level of information of the people that give you that first level. That's where all the conspiracy theories fall. A lot of them have a lot of truth, but they fail to disclose that third level of truth, which is the hidden hand, the true hidden agenda that a very few are privileged to know, but that second level knows exists, and they just want to be part of that strain. They don't want to be part of that third level that is just being completely propagandized, about everything. Coffee's good for you. Coffee's bad for you. Sugar's good for you. Sugar's bad for you. Air is good for you. Air is bad for you. Water's good for you. Water's bad for you. Right? They just in this never-ending bombardment of information that's all meant, excuse me, to carry on a manipulation, and therefore the truth in it is only true by coincidence. If it happens to work to manipulate you, I might show you 99 facts so I can fool you about the 100th conclusion. So This is what Anthony Sutton was already lecturing about in the 70s and 80s that very few people ever talk about. And I hope people will go learn something from him. So this first level, or this first point that I want to keep bringing everybody's mind to in their own study, is that the information you think you're getting, even the information I must rely on, and that's why I relate the way they're presenting their circus. I don't pretend that any one of their claims has anything to do with reality. They might, for instance, the whole Dakota pipeline issue. You telling me they didn't know that would be an issue, and when it was, that it didn't cost more money and more headache and create so much more turmoil and hostility and violence and destruction to pursue the issue the way they did than to have said, you know what, we'll just go around your land because that's the right thing to do. Everybody's so upset. Yeah, let's find a different way. I say the whole thing could have been just scripted into a world in which what's been sent down the pipeline for many years ago is we're going to enter a time of propaganda here where the people can't know what's really going on, what's true, what's not true. They need to be divided about everything, every possible issue. Native American versus Black Lives Matter, Yellow Lives, or, somebody's a traitor and someone's our best friend and someone's our enemy. And boy, everybody's got to be divided over all those issues. And that's not by accident, because the airwaves are owned by a few people and they could be teaching us some of the things that are being taught, love. And, I mean, the truth is out there and they teach. For instance, they're the New Age's greatest teacher, Manly P. Hall. Go listen to Manly P. Hall. He doesn't sound like a Aleister Crowley fan, even though they're all part of the same family. So what was Aleister Crowley doing? He don't sound anything like he and Manly P. Hall have anything in common. Manly P. Hall sounds like almost a saint, just a patient man who's trying to present reality and even spiritual reality in a real way. It's all very intelligent. You wouldn't listen to Manly P. Hall and say, "Oh, there's a devil worshiping, blood drinking, child sacrificing demon," if I ever heard one. You might. So Aleister Crowley, I'm saying, is propaganda. He was put there to hide the message in that exoteric way, to get the masses that would be willing to talk backward because they were told to do all this stupid stuff, to be purposely anti-religious, to be fanatically anti-religious in the same way the religious were fanatically religious. That's as much against the real teaching as Christianity. Aleister Crowley's is as truly antithetical to the teaching of the New Age and what's really coming, and yet he's part of their whole team. The Blavatsky and that chain of the whole New Age, and that, because what's it really about but the destruction of an idea of a God outside you and the accepting, the finally coming to realize that you've been fooled all along, finally coming to realize that God comes from within you, God is within you. If there is such a thing as a supernatural anything, it's already in you, it's in us, it isn't coming from the sky, which will now finally bring us to our second point. Why is it that religion especially teaches that it is coming from the sky? Why is everyone waiting for the devil, the Antichrist, the Messiah to come from the sky? Why are religious people sold on that vision of it, even though it's obvious, truly obvious, that that's not at all the way the scripture portrays it? Even in its worst manipulated concept, even if the scripture's just stupidly manipulated by people that are trying to control others, well, there's enough stuff in there that I guess they couldn't figure out how to manipulate it and just let it fly. All this teaching of this Messiah about you live by dying, and I guess they didn't know what to make of it, so they left it in there. As far as I'm concerned, you can really discern the most unique teaching of all mankind. And so where's that come from? All these people that were trying to control others, they left this teaching? Excuse me. That doesn't make any sense. But what does make sense is that we retain some reflection of what's been given, and yet that, rather than be constantly before us, the reality of what's been given, the way I've been trying to demonstrate it through our Bible study now for a couple of years at least, that the teaching of Jesus is completely different. Christianity is completely wrong. It's not about judging others. Nobody's going to heaven. Heaven's within you. It's about loving others. Their great teacher Paul says if you have all the faith that can move mountains, but you don't have love, you don't gain anything. So what's this whole, have faith, go to heaven? Don't believe in Jesus, go to hell. Where do they find that? Why is that perpetuated? Why isn't that questioned? Just like why isn't 9/11 questioned by anyone in any journalism anywhere, especially in the US of A? Why isn't that the number one question? Hey, how come after all these years we can't see video of those damn planes now? We know, you went and took 90 cameras or whatever, took all the footage from all the cameras that, can see the Pentagon or would be that plane that would have gone through their path, all the gas stations and the all the stores with cameras. You can't show us, huh? Confirm that what you told us. A plane hit the Pentagon, right? And it is possible for a plane to knock down the Twin Towers, even though all the architects and engineers say, But nobody questions that now, even after all these years, that it's not national security, that the terrorists don't know what we know. Huh? So nobody's calling for the proof. Just like nobody's calling for the bankers' heads that stole everything and leave us now where it costs $2,000 a month for an apartment. So that you can go to work to pay all your money to the people who rent you the apartment. It's sickening. So I want to get to this other point because I've seen a couple of things now through the media. My friend just sent me this little clip from a new movie called Paul the Alien, which I'm sure everybody must know except me because I'm out of the loop. But it was the clip where the Christian who runs, I guess, the RV park or whatever, comes in to say, hey, I know you had 3 people here instead of 2. And you hear an argument coming from the bathroom. And the woman is a devout Christian. And being a devout Christian, of course, she argues that the world was made in 6 days and it's only 4,000 years old. And, right? That's the modern version. Of course, a devout Christian, boy, they're going to die for that. And all this propaganda is there exactly to show you that, what you're going to die for. That's stupid Christianity. because the rest of the world's going to turn on that so fast. Because, of course, what they show is the aliens, the one, with the stronger argument. The aliens taking a dump, which you can hear in the clip, while the Christians making her absurd Christian claims, claiming her faith. And in the end, you see that it's an alien, and the Christian faints at the sight of what's bringing her the truth. So it's all very telling. But I want to balance that now, because that's what the Simpsons have been teaching you for 20, 30 years. That's what the Family Guy's been teaching you. I've been saying it as long as I've, realized now for the last 2, 3 years, the absolute disgusting reality of what stands in as Christianity today, the apostasia that Paul predicted, the forsaking of the truth. That a Christian, someone that's supposed to give their head, that they're supposed to love their neighbor, no matter what their neighbor is. They're supposed to give and love and forgive, and in that way, they show what the Spirit of God is. That's the Spirit that lives forever. That's it. That's heaven. That's the kingdom of heaven. That's it. You don't go anywhere. You finally learn that no matter how much faith you have, no matter how much money you have or don't have, no matter what you do or don't do, if you don't love in that way, if you're not willing to tell the people who are, butchering you, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. If you're not there yet, you're not there yet. You're not going to heaven. That's heaven. So that's the real Christian message, and only when you have the strength, see, that's how you have the strength to turn the other cheek, because you know that fighting doesn't, that's not heaven, that's not God. God is loving your enemy so much you'd let them kill you and pray for their own forgiveness. That's heaven. And so they've turned that into all these hypocrites that pretend that they're better because they get on their knees and say, "Oh, Jesus, forgive me," and then they go out and judge their neighbor instead of love their neighbor. They hoard their wealth instead of share their wealth. They pass the poor instead of feed the poor. And they pretend they're righteous. It's just disgusting. And so I believe that's all been set up on purpose. Those people have been offered, they've been tricked into following this, what should be an obvious diversion of the truth. And so I'll finish by pointing out that there's an amazing, in my view, in our world today, amazing representation of the truth right in everybody's face, just like about 8 years ago or so, I think it was 2010 or even 2009, right after the crash, right after the theft of the world's money. Forget his name now, made that movie Inside Job, that documentary, and it won the Academy Award for Documentary of the Year. Inside Job, portraying how who stole all the money and how they did it by this scam that the government agencies were in on, right? The rating agencies, all three of them, given these I'm trying to think what to call them, these hoaxes, AAA coverage. I mean, if you tried to get away with anything like that in your neighborhood, you'd go to jail for fraud, for theft, for any number of crimes. But a documentary comes out the year after showing, really just, had everybody dead to rights. Really demonstrated who should have been hauled into a grand jury and questioned and had all their money taken and possibly spending the rest of their life in jail. The destruction that was done through this fraud is beyond, the punitive damages are beyond anything any of them could ever pay. Close their bank down and take every dollar, and you wouldn't touch the trillions upon trillions in damage that it all inflicted. Which is why I say you think that was just an accident, huh? They just broke the world on accident because they needed the money. No way. That was a big move. Big move in the big plan to cripple the average person, cripple the world in a quick and real blow, like a fighter that's still got some moves left until he takes that body blow right to the solar plexus and go, boy, now he's still standing, but oh boy, it'll slow you right down. You're not breathing so well. Oh, you okay? Oh yeah, okay. Now you're ready to go down. So I see it's more like that kind of move because, did any single one of them get prosecuted? No, as the movie showed, the power was being consolidated even at that time. It was giving them more power, even as it was obvious that they criminally destroyed the economy and government with the participation of the government agencies. Is that even, I mean, no big deal, huh? Okay, here we are down the road from that. No big deal. No big deal. No big deal. So they show you the truth. And in our modern world, it's wow, sometimes they'll just boom, here it is. Here you are. Here's what happened. Can you handle the truth? What are you going to do about it? How evolved, how enlightened, how awakened are you? Right? Here's the truth. And boy, the sheeple are just so numb. What can you do? It's the way it is. And it really is. It is the way. I mean, that's the condition we're all in. What can you do? I mean, when I'm in their world, I'm mooing right through it with my little chip in my card and stand in line here for 2 hours to get your driver's license renewed, stand in line here to pay a fee, stand in line there. How can I stop it? I can't stand even being back in this country. But they're all the same. But like I say, this country takes the most and gives you the least, and the whole time pat you on the back with a big smile. Congratulations, boy, are you lucky son of a gun? Tell us how lucky you are. Don't put that wipe that frown off your face. You better smile. You non-patriotic, ungrateful. Why don't you go back to the country you came from? You're here in the great USA. You will pay top dollar to support this terrorist nation, and you will call us free and great, and you will wave that flag, and you will smile. It's just sickening. It makes my heart sick. It makes my stomach sick. Actually, I think it's so unhealthy. I've never felt so unhealthy since I've had to spend so much time here in the last 12 years. But it's important right now that I'm here and I'm doing what I have to do, and so I want to share with you one expression of the truth that I found remarkable, like this documentary, Inside Job. If you've never seen that, you sure owe it to yourself to at least see the truth right in your face. It's not all the truth, but it's, boy, oh boy, can you just go, wow, you're just showing us. And how come none of these people are in jail now? So anyway, recently I watched Paul, the Apostle of Christ, the movie. And I was absolutely blown away because I expected to see propaganda of the, zealous preacher that believes in a superstition and convinces others to believe in a superstition. And instead, even though much of the proposition of the story of Luke sneaking in, and I didn't buy that. I didn't buy a poor person of that time, a Jew, or especially at that time they're portraying during the time when they're going after Christian, when they're going after the Christians. Herod's going after the Christians for for blaming them on burning Rome. I don't buy that anybody's sneaking around there like that or getting access to Paul or any of that. But it was a nice proposition to paint the history of the moment where now they've got Paul in prison, and that eventually does end in him giving his head. We know that from Scripture. We don't know that this sort of encounter ever took place, but we don't know that it didn't. We do know that he gave his head, and we know that there were these certain people, this church of Rome that he went to, that was important to him, and all this kind of thing. So they use that circumstance, and then they take from all of the letters of Paul, the way I see it, and they put these words in Paul's mouth as he explains to Luke his perspective on what's going on in the church at that time, which is many of the people in the church, they're being persecuted in a way that's unbearable. They're lighting people on fire and feeding them to the lions, and all that kind of thing is going on. To Christians, you claim to be a Christian. Okay, come on, we'll come and feed you to the lions. I mean, imagine how hard it is to admit your faith. So the Christians, of course, are hiding out at that time because they don't want to be fed to the lions. And Herod's after them, persecuting them. And this is the time that they're portraying. And Luke's sort of the go-between, getting Paul's version of his own life, in which Paul's also bringing about all the wisdom that he's learned from Jesus, the Messiah, and relating it to Luke, who's struggling with these Christian people hiding out, being persecuted. And they want to know what, the young ones, especially now, this is generations, a couple generations now. I'm sorry, at least one generation, but I mean, the people that knew Christ are dying out, and what's left are the next generation who never knew him, but their parents told them, and you got to follow this, love your neighbor, don't fight with others, give to others, all this. Now these people are killing them, and of course the young ones want to fight back, and some of them are fighting back. And what I'd like to share with people is that I found it astounding that the way they presented Paul and what he learned from the Messiah seems to be, to me, very accurate of what the Messiah really taught. And I almost just fell off my chair to think that they had the gall, but they don't, they have the foresight to show what the teaching really is. Because I believe that they're helping to set the younger generation up to hear that teaching now come through their false Messiah. The false Messiah is going to come, and I'll bet he's going to teach everything that you see in that movie that Paul learned from the Messiah. The only way is love. You've got to love. You can't fight back. You have to love. That's what Jesus taught. That's what the Messiah taught. I was very surprised to find them put that in the mouth of the same people who are behind the Zionists, who we know are behind the war machine of America, the free and great America. In God we trust. That's why we have military bases all over the world, and ride around in our Hummers with our young people, given such a wonderful vision to the world of our military might. Because in God we trust. And that's how God does it. He does it through the military. So it was very surprising to me to see them present the message of the Messiah was really one of love and peace and forgiveness and this deeper understanding of the Spirit of God. So I feel that that's all part of this setup for this future world where, remember, these people that are running the world in their mind are the enlightened ones that are leading the world to a real spiritual understanding of our own responsibility in love to evolve ourselves toward that godhood, whatever that actually means, but that we're not waiting to bow to some Zeus in the sky, and that the people that refuse to make that distinction, you know, they're setting those people up to kill each other so that everyone else can see that and realize that, yeah, you can't let that go on. We're not going to do that anymore. We are going to make different laws. And so that brings us to this discussion I want to have on the next show about what sort of timing. I keep seeing it as a longer range project, perhaps, that this whole timing that they're on to bring about their Messiah is in a stage, but the end is not yet, because it might be a generation away. Anyway, this is all part of the discussion I want to have based on the reality of evolving into a place where you can deny people even the right to claim Jesus and deny them the right to eat. Can't you take the mark that the Messiah says to take, or you don't buy and sell, you don't eat. How do you get there from here? And I know we can anyway. I don't want to go on today, but we can talk about that. You can comment about it if there's any part of this you want specifically to discuss. But anyway, I hope that this idea of down the rabbit hole captures your imagination in the sense of being very careful about led in one anyway about what you see in your news, relating that to a deeper story that is already scripted. And in that script, the audience has to be moved in their time, in the timing of the story, so that any one of the things they're showing you, it doesn't even have to be happening in real life. Putin doesn't have to be receiving Donald Trump, who doesn't have to be getting on a plane for Russia. They could both be playing golf in Florida, if that's the case, right? But they're reporting in the news that Trump said, because that's where the script's at this week. That combined with the way Hollywood and our real world is giving it to us in our face, our social media, and this day by day, week by week undermining of religion. And yet, boom, here's this movie that comes out and really kind of spells out the truth. I don't know how popular it is or how many people have seen it, but let me know if you have or what you think of it. Anyway, happy to talk to you guys and look forward to trying to get more shows together. All right, take care, everyone.